Do you like the gaming news that you read online? Are you frustrated with how reviews are rated and handled? What does it mean exactly to be a games journalist? And can we even hold it to the same standards of regular journalism? This is what we're talking about today, up next on Downloadable Content.
Welcome to Downloadable Content. I'm Brian, and you just heard the voice of Wyatt.
Hello!
Also on this episode, we have Nick, who has dropped
I
off
actually
the face
have
of
the mute button off.
Yes! Right off the start of the bat. We have Mike, welcome back.
Ahoy, ahoy.
And we have Ryan.
Hello.
But yes, we are going to be talking about gaming journalism here on this episode of Downloadable Content, and for once... well, for thrice, I should say. This is only the third time this has happened. I will not be moderating an episode. Wyatt is going to be taking over this episode. The idea of gaming journalism was his idea, so I said, well, your idea, your episode, so that is what we are going to do. So before I give control back to him, as foolish as that may be, you can find every single episode of Downloadable Content on iTunes, YouTube, and Stitcher. And you can get in touch with us a variety of ways. Facebook.com/DLContent, on Twitter @DLContent, on Tumblr, dlcpodcast.tumblr.com, and you can always email us, dlcontent1@gmail.com. All the different ways to get downloadable content into your ears. Just be sure you clean up afterwards. We're not responsible for any potential discharge that follows. So with that said, Wyatt... be good to downloadable content, please. Take it away.
I suppose I should. So, just to get things started again, my name is Wyatt. I am the editor-in-chief and the co-founder of a small gaming journalism site myself called Sprites and Dice, and we'll talk about that later. But it's sort of one of those things that, because I started this website, I was interested in games journalism, where it is, where it has been, and why people are upset with it, and where it can possibly go next. So, wanted to have kind of a real open discussion about it. Something that we're going to talk about games journalism and the idea of reviews, how they're done, how publishing is done. We're going to stay away from sort of the segue that games journalism is often known for, which is Gamergate. That is a whole other debate, and if we started talking about that now, we would be here forever and all of you would hate us. So, we're just not going to touch that.
We just want to be loved.
Exactly. I mean, there's definitely a lot of really interesting stuff that needs to be talked about, but I do believe that they are two separate issues for the most part, and I want to keep it that way. So with that in mind, I really wanted to talk about how games are reviewed and how we talk about games in terms of publication online. I'm sure most people that are listening to this know what Game Informer is or was when they used to get it through their doorstep, or other gaming actual magazines that came in the mail. Now things have evolved, and they've evolved up into digital journalism. And as that process has gone along, and we have online advertising and otherwise, there's been a lot of really interesting and a lot of really frustrating things that I believe have happened. So before I really dig in, I want to just go down the list of all of our people here and ask the first question I have here, which is, what is gaming journalism to you, and what do you think defines it? Nick, you up first.
Okay. Well, I think gaming journalism really is pretty much what it says it is the reporting of events that occur in the video gaming world. And now there's two separate parts to this. There is the game review part of gaming journalism, and then there's the game information part of game journalism. So the gaming information is more kind of like what Joystick used to do before that got merged with Engadget, of really breaking down like all the little details about games, release dates, hands-on previews, screenshots, whatnot. And the review part is, well, speaks for itself, the actual review part of it. And that's it. That's all I got.
All right. Ryan?
Let's see, for the stuff that I do, actually, because I myself get Game Informer, so it's mainly just stuff I see from there. Journalism to me, like, especially in the gaming sense, it kind of says about, they talk about, like, some of the latest games that have come out, and, what they think, what they've heard about other people, like, what they've said about it, like, the good parts, the bad parts, what they think what a lot of people think it should have had, what it didn't have, all those sorts of things. Then the next part, otherwise, is just the ratings with it. I don't know. I guess it depends on the ratings for it, because I take those with a grain of salt. In all honesty, it really depends on like what your taste is for the game, because there are some games that get rated really good and have like a really crappy kind of playthrough with it, and there are some games that you barely even heard about, and then they're the real gems for it. So journalism kind of sways me a little bit, but it's more like I just gotta play the game and find out what's going on with it myself in order to actually determine how much I like it.
All right. Michael?
Gaming journalism for me is really like legitimate journalism is in its infancy at best. I worked for a very long time at a certain stop where people would come in to buy games. And, we had a very close relation to the people at Game Informer. And I mean, from a retail perspective, it seemed to me that Game Informer, which was the number one, magazine, is really just a GameStop advertisement. I mean, very rarely would a game get below like a 7. Every year, certain games get a 9. Very repetitive reviews that are clearly just designed to drive up sales. That being said, gaming journalism got its in its infancy was Nintendo Power and stuff. So to me, it really was born as a commercial, not really legitimate journalism. Now with the internet and people who are actually talented writers, with no invested interest in seeing games do well or sales jump up, it's different now. But to me, I mean, I'm still an old man, I guess.
Fair enough. No, I think that's some really good points, and this is definitely stuff I want to bring up. Brian?
I tend to really, really agree with Mike. Not to further elaborate on the point, but back in Series 1 of Downloadable Content, I did an episode on a biased press, and the bulk of the discussion was with sites and magazines like Game Informer, in which the reviews were not objective. To me, and even now, reading Game Informer really just feels like one long advertisement, because there have been times when games would be very, very highly reviewed in Game Informer, and they were the outlier. Like, oh, this game is a 9 out of 10, where you'll go on a bunch of other IGN, GameSpot, 5, 4, and, very, very... And Game Informer denies this up and down, but I still strongly think they have a very anti-Nintendo bent. I almost never see a Nintendo game with a good review at all. And that theory is kind of supported by the one time I went into GameStop looking for a used copy of the GameCube Resident Evil 4 back when GameStop still had GameCube games.
1987.
And the counter, the two cashiers practically laughed me out of the store. Like, you're looking for a GameCube game? So it's but now definitely with much more sites and places to go, I think video game reporting is definitely have improved, especially when you're talking about games and the industry as a whole, and you're not talking about slapping a review number on a game. A lot of the episodes of downloadable content that I do are inspired by opinion pieces. So I'll look on Kotaku, Polygon, IGN for opinion pieces, things that can get people talking, which is definitely a facet and an important one to me of game journalism.
No, I'm going to agree with you there, and that actually kind of brings up my second question. Definitely want to have some real discussion on this one because honestly, I'm getting sort of the same viewpoint from a lot of you guys here, which is that the idea of like opinion pieces and kind of in-depth articles about games and about the news itself are really, really great, and there's a lot of stuff where that's moving forward. But games reviews are problematic, and that it is kind of linked in with advertising. Am I right in that, or does anyone disagree with that?
Oh yeah, that's definitely true.
I definitely agree.
It absolutely is. You look at a lot of these sites nowadays, ad revenue is, especially with the site traffic nowadays, is just so large, and, especially, and with the ads being how these sites make money, it's not through donations, it's not through subscribership, or sometimes it can be, but really a lot of it is through ad work. So when you see a site like, let's say IGN, for example, and they got a giant Call of Duty ad on there, it's kind of like Game Informer, where, there is, I think, going to be a little skewed towards being a better review or a higher scored review, because, that's their big ad right there.
Absolutely. Ryan?
Alright. So, one of the main things I actually want to go on about is because I'm pretty sure you've all been seeing, and I'll discuss this one especially with some of the, what I've been hearing in the media, especially lately. I'm pretty sure all of you by now know what one of the most hyped up releases that just came out a couple of days ago actually was. I don't think I need to say which one it is because I'm pretty sure you all know what it is.
I almost fell out of my chair.
You mean that new Vita game?
Virtual Boy, come on.
Virtual Boy.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's Virtual
Burn your
Boy.
retinas, it's all over again.
But yes, Fallout 4. I'm sure I've already seen hashtag Fallout Widows for the alienated spouses, girlfriends, and significant others for this latest one. But yes, Fallout 4. Go on.
So with Fallout, Fallout 4. I've been hearing, especially here with me being at college, a good friend of mine who's in one of my classes, she actually works at GameStop, so she has to deal with this pretty much constantly for having to hear about all this stuff about how the media hypes up Fallout 4, all the new perks, all the new stuff and whatnot, and then we find out, oh wait, it's only the first release of stuff. There's gonna be bugs attached to it, and I'm like, oh, you don't say. It's only the first release for this stuff. But yeah, and one of the few things that I'm actually reading here, this is on Game Informer itself, so yeah. I guess there are what are called 6 play styles or something like that. There's the Melee Maestro, the Marksman, the Scavenger, Stealth Boy, Jack of all trades, and Wild Card. I'm not gonna go too much because I'm pretty sure everybody can understand what they are, but it's like, to me, you hype up things so damn much, but then what you don't realize is that even with all the hype that goes on with the games, there's gonna be stuff that people are gonna always bitch about. Sure, everybody says, oh, but it's a new style of stuff, gameplay is much better, but then I think one of the main complaints that I heard about it recently was that apparently something was going on that people were getting upset with the loading time. Well, I don't know if it's loading time or what it was, but like with the frames per second, that something wasn't, basically it was off somewhere, and that apparently a lot of people were bitching about that with Fallout 4, especially on the PS4. So I don't know whether it means that there was a glitch in the system or if they just have it, even with the patch, it just hasn't come up yet.
All right. Wait, there's a problem with the load times. I'm sorry. For once, I'm not involved in the Fallout 4 thing. I know that whenever you get into a Bethesda game, you have to set aside like a week of time, vacation time, typically, to get through it. So I haven't opened up that portal. So there's a problem with the load times.
I've heard on the Xbox One it's especially bad.
Okay. No, I was just wondering because I remember that used to be a problem with Oblivion, where great about all these massive, awesome worlds, but you have to generate it all, and so that takes a little time.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me see if I can find it on here because it was under a thing I saw on Facebook somewhere. So it was about, if I can find the dang thing. It's basically about like something for loading up, like I guess when you're looking around at your environment or something. I guess it wasn't loading, the loading wasn't synchronized with everything else pretty much. So it was like you got lag in between things. That is what I heard about it.
It's alright,
Gotcha.
It's not like accuracy is a big deal in a shooting game. I wouldn't worry about it.
No, I mean that is something that's definitely important is hype. Again, we've already touched on that. I want to talk about more later, but the idea that original reviews, like the previews that reviews old-fashioned print magazines, was a way to kind of hype people up, and then you have the review come out, and it would come right out, and so you'd have all this hype in the air, and then when something would go wrong day one, did anyone here play Diablo 3, or did anyone try to play Diablo 3 on its first day out?
Yes.
You know the error joke. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, yes. It significantly contributed to the amount that I drink. So.
No, where you have this great, awesome game that is fantastic, but all the hype kind of takes you above and beyond. So when there's a problem that happens because of they're big, complex things, there's loading issues or there's bugs when this giant immersive world comes out, it throws people into a rage, and then they demand lower scores or otherwise. Mike, you wanted to speak next?
That's kind of touches on exactly what I wanted to say. I wanted to just hit three things real quick. Number one is the idea of the score number, like you're grading a high school paper or something, and some of them range between 1 to 5, then you have 1 to 10, then you have 1 to 100, and it just becomes so diluted. I understand a score of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but when you start including 1.5, 2.5, so what's the difference between a 7.25 and a 7.50? What is that line that it cross this line? So now it's a 7.50 instead of a 7.25. I think that is just diluting the score, which is really all some people look at, which leads me to point two, is that especially in Game Informer, if you look at the score, which is an 8 or a 13 out of 10, the reviews sometimes, they are not describing a game that deserves that review. The list of problems with the game, it doesn't sometimes seem to be factored into the score because it's all about this number that everyone looks at, and that's what you see on the game advertising, right? It's Fallout 4, 9 out of 10, oh, that must mean it's good. But then you have the other problem, the third thing, is the idea that gaming journalism has to adapt to this idea of the final version versus the initial release. I mean, the review can change, the game can get better. So
right.
That's something that doesn't happen with films,
Yeah, no, and that is something where the medium of games is so different from reviews of a book. Because once a book comes out, it's kind of stuck that way unless you do a second edition of it.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with a movie or otherwise, where games constantly evolve. I know that one place where I was so happy when they started doing these changes is when they started doing something called review in progress for very large games, namely MMOs. When the expansions for World of Warcraft started coming out, I started seeing that where they were doing the Burning Crusade review in progress, where they talked about the game. They did 4 or 5 articles, one after every day, and then they gave a score after a week of experience in it. Stuff like that's cool, and I think that's kind of moving towards reviews that make more sense for gaming in some cases, but it's definitely not a permanent fix, if you know what I mean. Nick?
Well, and here's my single biggest thing with the scores is that's all the scores are, is just an arbitrary number for what one or two, maybe three guys, maybe a small team think about a particular game, but they never really, and again, as to what Michael was saying, sometimes some of these major points are missed because they have to assign a number to it. I really hate that, and it really, and this is why I kind of look more towards to like maybe someone like the Game Explain guys who don't give a score and really talk more just really about what the game is and go over a lot of the fine details and then just sum it up in a simple sentence or two about their overall thought of the game and why should you or should you not pick this up, or maybe wait till there's wait for the bargain bin, or wait till maybe it goes on sale somewhere, or don't even bother picking it up off your GameFly account. Some games are just that bad. But
that's a good idea. They should put a price instead of a number, instead of a score. This is a $30
That makes sense.
But seriously, nowadays games are so expensive. They're $60. Sometimes if you want to get the special editions or the all the DLC, you're easily spending $90-$100 a pop.
Oh yeah.
We don't have that. Some people just don't have that kind of money. Namely, us.
Yep.
So, maybe, I would like people to, give me more of a figure of, save it for a Steam sale. So, that's how I pick up some of the games, is because it's dirt cheap. That's how I get myself into games like Dishonored, which ended up being awesome. But, don't assign just like these numbers, because the numbers don't mean anything to me. You can give a 9 out of 10 for a Call of Duty, but I already know what the game is, and the game doesn't interest me. Mm-hmm. Same thing with Fallout 4. You can give 90, 95 out of 100. But I know the game, I've played the games, they don't interest me. The number, to me, is meaningless.
The review of Fallout 4, to me, is wait a year and get the Game of the Year edition for $20.
Yeah. What you said about it's a small team that usually is doing the review, or just a few people and it's their point of view about the game, I think that's really important. I mean, I'm just going to bring up some past history here. Remember when you guys used to play Mario Tennis all the time, Brian and Nick?
Yep.
Do you remember how I would walk in the room, ask what you guys were doing, see that on the screen, then just promptly walk out?
Mario Tennis, I think Mario Golf
ball.
was... Yeah, Mario Golf.
Sorry.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, that's one of the things is that I have no interest. The only sports game that I'm interested in video games is Mutant League Hockey, because you get to beat people up in it.
Oh, Mutant League Hockey was so good!
Mutant League Football had landmines, though.
Yeah, Mutant League Football was also really good.
I've never had a chance to play that one.
Wyatt, you would have definitely played the game if it was Mario Curling.
Yes! Well, I'm half Canadian, I have to. I'm obligated. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's simply sometimes you review a game and it's really good, but it is still based on personal preference. It's sort of how, let's just use a sort of a comparison, which would be food reviews. Someone can talk about a really, 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 really great, spicy, hottest chili pepper contest ever, and I'll go, that's wonderful. I will not step in foot of that store because it will kill me.
So someone don't like a ghost pepper.
But it's one of those things where it is based on personal preference. And how do you assign a score to that sometimes?
Is this what being the moderator is like? People just make fun of you the whole time?
Yeah, pretty much. Well, that's my life in general. But, Brian, you have anything you want to add, especially about Mario Tennis?
Not to mention that Mario Tennis is a fun game, and,
it's Mario Sports Ball from now on.
Yeah, it's Mario Sports Ball. That's
Well, they got Sports Mix, kind of pretty much the same thing.
Steering the conversation back a few quantum leaps. I have basically stopped paying attention to review scores for video games for years. I don't really put any sort of faith in them. GameStop has put me off of review scores entirely.
Glad we could help.
Yeah, thank you. Wonderful service you provided. Because it's so objective, and it only further highlights just how much reviews are nothing more than glorified ads. Going back to Fallout 4, there was a news article that somebody linked me to saying that Bethesda issued a review embargo on the review embargo.
Yes, I saw that, and I just head desk so hard.
So...
Wait, how do you embargo the embargo?
Like this. Obviously you all know that professional review sites, they get an advanced copy of the game, and normally you'll see a review for that game a week or two before the game releases.
Mm-hmm.
Bethesda specifically said, do not release your reviews until the day before the game comes out.
Well, that's just a regular embargo.
Yes, but I had never heard of that practice ever. I'm like, why are you telling the review sites to hold off on reviews until like 12 hours before the game actually launches? It's like, what purpose does that serve? Are you afraid that people are going to write disparaging things about it?
Yes.
That's actually
exactly what it is.
That's part of it. Part of it is also it's a long-standing tradition. Actually, is embargoes. I'm actually very thankful or kind of proud that we had to deal with our first embargo with Sprites and Dice. Actually, is we were reviewing a really awesome small indie game called Jotun, and they put an embargo saying, "Hey, look, any reviews that go up, if they can just wait until this particular day, 9 a.m., then post whatever you want." I believe it was a few hours before the game went up, or the day before it went up. I can't remember off the top of my head. It wasn't my article. But we did have an embargo, and that is standard practice, not just with big games, but small ones, to talk about the game. Yeah, it's a way to kind of make sure that it stays relevant. Like, if I wrote a review about Civilization 5 Beyond Earth 2 weeks before the game came out...
Nobody could have bought it anyway. Doesn't matter.
I will fight you on that one, but that's another story.
I love that game.
Okay, yeah, I love that game too. Thank you. Thank you, someone else that likes that game. But, damn it, I lost the train of thought. What we need to do is...
Keep it relevant.
The question of it was... Sorry.
Keep it relevant. You would say keep it relevant.
So the question really is embargoes fair? I mean, there is a need for them just to make sure things stay relevant and make sure that sort of plot hooks or plot holes or plot devices aren't revealed ahead of time, because some reviews do reveal stuff about the plot that they don't want to have released before people get their hands on it, and sometimes it is about the press and making sure that the hype has a chance to sink in. People still buy their midnight copies before the game comes out. So there is some weird things about trade embargoes, but I do understand some need for them to be sure. But Brian, what you said kind of segues into my second question, which is... when was the last time that you guys actually used a professional games review in order to inform whether or not you were going to buy a new game coming out? I'm curious, genuinely.
Oh, Jesus.
Never. Honestly.
It's been a long time. It probably... And I think part of this, I blame you, Wyatt.
What?
I think this is when I went and picked up Oblivion. is probably the last time I did that, and it was fun for what it was worth, but it just was not my style of game. I've said that over and over on this podcast.
Yeah, 10 years. It's been 10 years since you and Wyatt have spoken to each other, and you're already blaming him for shit. What are you?
About 10 years ago?
What are you, his Jewish mother?
Well, we learned in our bloodline that we probably were Jewish at one point, so maybe.
In any event,
How is that my fault? Hold on, 1 second. We're going to go back for a moment here. Was Oblivion even out when we were in college together?
God!
Stop talking.
What? Because you and I were on a conversation. This was after I was back in Binghamton.
Okay.
And you were. I think you were on an Oblivion binge.
I was for like a month, I remember.
It's what they call it. It's like a drug binge or what anything. It's an Oblivion binge. It's a Skyrim binge.
Yeah, pretty much. And I think you kind of coaxed me to reading some of the reviews, and I ended up ultimately buying it once I got my 360.
Oblivion came out in 2006.
So 9 years.
Yep.
9 years? Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, so I think that was the last time that I bought, used a review to buy a game, and I want to say you showed me some of the review stuff, and yes, you were absolutely right. It was, for what it was worth, a great game, but it just wasn't my kind of game.
Fair
but
enough.
that was kind of the.
You don't like good games, we understand.
Wow! Ouch!
Zing, Mike.
But I also started to realize, and that was when I started to look at like professional, sites like IGN and sites like Game Informer magazine, to see the ads just going, see the giant ads for them. I think, no, this was a few years later with Brian during season 1. I think I was on that episode, if I wasn't mistaken. And we got talking about that very issue, and just never since.
Fair enough. Anyone else can remember like a specific time that they used a professional review for getting a game, whether they liked it, they hated it?
I honestly don't know of a single instance that I've ever used a professional review. I mean, I usually read reviews about games that I like. Like, I remember when Oblivion came out, and I'm a huge Elder Scrolls fan, and I only read it to, feed my hype train. It was coal for the engine. That's all it was. I don't think I've ever actually used a review. Maybe that Def Jam fighting game for PlayStation 2. I don't know. I really don't remember a single instance.
Yeah, I'd have to say the same thing. It's just I don't put stock in professional reviews. I tend to enjoy games that professional reviewers crap all over. So it's
So you're the MST3K.
I kind of am. It's just I put, taking professional reviews aside for a second, I put more faith in user reviews.
Yes.
The people who actually play the damn games and are not a paid shill to act. So, like on Steam, for example, I will pay far more attention to the overall user review than a professional review, because.
And do you ever compare that to the Metacritic score?
Yes.
It is hilarious how many games have overwhelmingly positive user reviews, and the Metacritic score is like a 50.
Yeah. So it's
it is kind of funny though, really, that, and vice versa.
So that's what that's why for that facet of gaming journalism, I really don't. I don't give a damn about professional review scores. I'll read them, and I'll be like, yep, where's your disclaimer saying you were paid by so and so to hype this game up? So
what's the name of your game review journalism site again?
So my kind of follow-up question is, we'll get there.
Wow, that was just shove that aside.
I'll deal with that later. So, I mean, because my gaming journalism site, to be quite honest, is kind of in this great in-between, because I think we have one sponsor who donates to us, and I think we've gotten only a handful of review copies for games, so it's not like we're being paid for anything. But, so it's interesting kind of navigating that, where if we ever do start getting advertisement money, which I don't think we're going that route, we're going Patreon mostly in our development, but that's a whole other can of worms. But, Brian, you said user reviews. Who here uses user reviews in order to guide them?
I mean, I do. I really like grand strategy games, so like Paradox games, Europa Universalis, Crusader Kings 2, stuff like that. And if I see a game that's in the similar genre, I will look at the user reviews. Recently, I purchased Making History, The Great War, based on user reviews. Not a professional review, but the user reviews right there on Steam. And it was worth $8. That much is true.
Yeah. I know that for myself, actually. I've realized that I was kind of going back to, I'm trying to remember the last time I used a professional review to accurately buy something. Like, I looked at it and then purchased it, and I can't remember anything off the top of my head. What I can remember is a lot of them where I went during Steam sale especially, I went to the mass Steam review where, they have 1,000, 2,000 reviews, and you kind of see what the general feel for the game is. I read 5 or 6 of them that are positive, a few that are negative, and I make my decision because then I'm getting a lot of different perspective. And I found that works really well for me because you have all this content and you're getting it directly from the horse's mouth, so to speak.
It just seems more honest, even if it's not. I'm sure there's plenty of gaming websites that we write off as like, oh, they're just shills, but they're not. But something about just, I bought the game too, I'm not a professional, this is what I thought of it. It's more relatable.
Right. Actually, something that I find myself doing, which is maybe a weird habit, please tell me if someone else does this, which is I'll buy a game. I love the game. I then go read the reviews after I've purchased the game to see if I'm validated in thinking that this game is awesome. And then I find out that it's got crappy reviews and go, what the hell is wrong with you people? This is an amazing game.
That has happened so many times.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel with professional reviews. It's like, oh, professional reviews shat all over but I love this game! And it's like, yes, okay, maybe it didn't make you, Scrooge McDuck piles of cash GameStop, but don't shit all over this game!
Great example for me is the Beyond Earth series for Civilization V, where for me, this is my kind of focus and frustration, is that it's a game that's trying to do something different than Civilization V and like the regular Civilization series. And I read the reviews and half of them are like, okay, we're going to give it a 6 out of 10 because it's too different from Civilization V. And then I read the other half and they go, oh, it's too much like Civilization V. They're not being experimental enough. 6 out of 10. And you're just like, what's happening? And you kind of get these games that, because they're different and they're not a mainstream game, or because they're not like the next iteration of the next Call of Duty or otherwise, or they fall into kind of a weird niche, reviewers look at it, go, huh? And then kind of move on, or otherwise. I'm not sure if anyone else falls into that feeling.
And again, that's that whole... this is just one review from one opinion. Really, I treat, sometimes I almost feel like I have to treat professional opinions like a user review at times.
All right.
But, these are user reviews that have lost all sense of humor, all sense of fun. They're kind of like Congress.
Ouch!
Ooh.
Oh, don't break Congress.
I would go that far.
So,
these guys are crooks, but come on, let's not compare them to Congress.
But I kind of have to treat them like another user, and it's just one opinion out of thousands, and theirs is just no more valid than the next.
But it establishes a narrative, and what he said about Beyond Earth is perfect. Like, every single review is it's either too much exactly like Civilization V, or it is too different. And there's this narrative that it's not Civilization 6. It's not just a sequel. It's supposed to be similar but a different game.
Yeah, divergent. And again, Mike, I have to ask: you said you like the game, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun. I especially like the new DLC with the diplomacy options. I think it's really great.
The diplomacy, the aquatic cities, and again, in that even alone, the review said one of two things. They said, you know what? I love the new aquatic cities. They add diversity and difference to the game, but the new diplomacy system is murky and confused. And then the other set of reviews were like, I love the new diplomacy system. It's great and it's nuanced, but the aquatic cities are meh. They're okay, I guess. 6 out of 10. Like, it's just...
Exactly. That's the narrative. Sometimes it gets established in video game journalism, and no matter what you do, you can't break out of it.
Right, and I do know that the user reviews also don't like it. There's a lot of mixed user reviews too, but it's one of those games that I love that goes completely against the grain of things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, along the lines of that too is like the same thing for me. And the reason why I said some people will kill me for saying this is because, well, again, and Brian knows this very well. I'm a huge fanboy of the Final Fantasy series, and everybody's basically. I don't care what people say. I'm the black sheep of that stuff because I actually enjoyed playing through the Final Fantasy 13 trilogy. I don't care what people.
All right, you have mentioned it, and Ryan, you've reached your limit. I'm going to shoot you if you continue this line of inquiry.
Hold on, guys. I think we're losing Ryan's feed. I'm sorry. These guys can pop out right about now. I'm so sorry. We'll talk to him next week in our next episode.
Like I said, I'm the black sheep of people who actually enjoys that stuff with it. I don't care. I guess it gets
You're
a
wrong.
decent.
You're just wrong.
It was a very good cutscene. The whole thing was a very good cutscene. I'll give it that.
I mean, that's fair enough, though. It really is that, there's different views, and sometimes you're going to like a game that most people are going to think are bad. I know that when I still had my PS2, and that was my main gaming mode of choice, I loved the Daisuke series, which is, JRPG ridiculousness to the extreme, and all the reviews that were coming out for that at the time were saying, oh, game has outdated graphics, game is still, too slow and uses too many UI interface screens. And I'm like, that's the genre. Everyone else is now on a huge Halo kick, but this is why this game is loved by this subsection. So sometimes it's weird because
It's not enough like Halo.
right, Daisuke is not Halo. That's the one thing we can all take away from this.
This guy is anything but.
But
This guy is, do you have 2,000 hours of spare time? Great? Yes.
Great. Enjoy half the game.
But and so for some people love that. I mean, I used to love that. Now I have a life and a wife, and I don't have that time anymore.
Yeah, they don't appreciate that.
The other question sort of is for games journalism is how can you even review? It's not even how do you review games journalism, is how do you review it all the same? The review for an MMO is going to be so different from something like Halo or Final Fantasy 13, where you have one that's strictly multiplayer and is always online and always has to have new content coming out, to one which is supposed to be a murder fest where you're having these constant quick games. It's supposed to be balanced and tight and fixed. And then you have one where it's supposed to be this really immersive single-player experience. You can't even review all of those the same way, right?
Well, I mean, that goes back to the problem with the score. I mean, a current game, the first one that jumps to mind is Verdun. Verdun is an amazing multiplayer first-person shooter. It's really a lot of fun. Nobody plays it, so the matches kind of suck. Like, you can't factor the fact that, like, this game has a very low user base, and the size of the user base is essential to your enjoyment of the game. Like, how do you factor that in?
I think one thing that games journalism... I don't know either. But one thing I do want to just kind of get a general consensus from is that something that I feel like we all kind of agree on, is that games journalism is different from all other gaming journalism, or sorry, games journalism is different than standard journalism, and one of the major problems is how do you do fairness in terms of reviews?
And that's really the point. I mean, it's very hard to review a game objectively because every single one of us has our own likes, dislikes, games we like to play, game genres we like to play. So it's really, really impossible to get a single objective review. That's why we have a variety of sources to review games from. I'll give you a perfect example. This is a game I love to shit on, and that's Resident Evil 6. And,
not hard to do.
Everyone stand back.
I don't think you're alone there.
All right. So here's the thing. Game Informer, when they reviewed, they gave it an 8.75 out of 10. Famitsu, probably paid by Capcom, gave it a 39 out of 40, and then you get Destructoid, 3. Edge, 6. G4, 2.5 out of 5. So, Game Informer and Famitsu are these massive outliers because a lot of people read those magazines and they're like, come on, hype. If we give it a good review, people will buy it. And I was an idiot who bought that game.
Yeah.
And then it's like, so that's probably an extreme case where you have such extremes of review. Which goes back to my earlier point of that's why if I'm going to use reviews to justify a game purchase, I always look at user reviews. To me, that spread of user review is far more accurate than seeing a professional review, because to me a professional reviewer has an agenda. They have to sell something. Whereas a user review, they're not making any money from the publisher. So it to me feels like a more truthful review.
Mhm.
I can agree with that. And again, I know that when I have used professional reviews in the past, it's been I use that alongside user reviews, and I make a decision if it's not a game that I immediately jump on. Like, for example, I'm a huge Blizzard fan. I have been since I was a kid. And so when Legacy of the Void came out, I went, damn it, pulled out my credit card, spent the $60 on the collector's edition a month before any reviews or anything else came out, because I knew that regardless, even if the game wasn't the best, like I wasn't a huge fan of Diablo 3, but I still bought the collector's edition because I knew I was still going to enjoy it, and I did. It was just something where I trusted the company, and I didn't need a review for that. I know a lot of, quote-unquote fanboys that will do that for a particular publisher or a genre or a series that they really, really like. And then for other ones, they wait a week until it comes out, they look at the reviews, they look at user reviews, and then they kind of make up their decision from that point on. And I think that's kind of where a lot of games journalism, or the reviews in games journalism, kind of are to try to sway those people that aren't set against or for it. But what you said about Famitsu being paid off by Capcom, or possibly, that's conspiracy theory right there. Does anyone remember the Kane and Lynch review issue?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so
Yeah.
one of the people here that was going to be on this chat was Jeremiah, right, Brian?
Yep, Jeremiah from Bombad Radio. He was initially going to be on this episode, but I had to, unfortunately, adjust the time to record because I had a whole shit of things to do, and so he couldn't be on it. So he did provide a bunch of notes. So
Yeah, so I want to use some of them because of some of the stuff that I would want to take a look at, and this is sort of the major linchpin in a lot of people's arguments that games journalism has a problem, was the Kane and Lynch review.
Is that a pun?
No, I hate puns. Stop that. But it
Eng-
does work.
an
It's
Stop.
like
English,
names
an English major who hates puns. All right.
Oh, there's a first for everything.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on before I get enraged by more puns. Is, if anyone remembers, Kane and Lynch came out, and this was a GameSpot. I always do that. GameSpot
Well, they're such very different
reviewer.
things.
He was a reviewer that was set up to review this brand new shooter game. Now, for a week or two ahead of time, I remember this distinctly because this was still when I was looking on professional websites every day just for new gaming news, just to have something to look at between classes or otherwise. They were running advertisements on the side of their screen for Kane and Lynch for a week or two ahead of time. They had pop-up videos that showed up on their website. The day comes out, and he posted the Game and Lynch review. If anyone could find it for me, if you could find the video review that he did, because in it, there's one point where he legitimately just kind of throws up his hands and shrugs, says, "Yeah, this game's just bad." There was a little bit where his professionalism about it just went out the window. He looked tired in this video review, where he's just like, "I did not enjoy this. It's it's blocky, it's murky. I don't enjoy the game," and he just kind of ran out of being articulate about it and just straight up said, "I don't like the game." A day or two later, he was fired. He was let go.
I like that game.
And then again, that goes into everyone has their own opinion. So this guy, put his opinion very much out there, and then within about 2 or 3 days, he was suddenly let go underneath murky circumstances, shall we say. Now, everyone said it was because of this review, but GameSpot came forward and said, "Oh no, it's not about that. It's because of not being professional and about differences of opinion." And there was a lot of kind of dust thrown up in the air to throw things off. There was an article recently, and I linked it there in our chat, that Kotaku ran, I believe it was 3 years ago now, where pretty much it was agreeing that yes, he was let go because of that review. He didn't name names still, but he was let go because he gave a bad review to this particular game. What do people think about that? Do you think this happens often, where advertising has too much of a role to play when it comes to reviews and also previews, the hype train, as we say?
I think the problem is that around the same time that this happened, like in Game Informer, not to keep harping on Game Informer, but every year they do their Games of the Year list. And I don't know if any of you guys remember or saw, but there was a running 5 or 6 years in a row where World of Warcraft was the Game of the Year.
Yeah.
There's something about that that's suspicious.
It further adds, to me personally, it further cements my opinion of not trusting professional game reviews, because stuff like this can happen. Somebody gives a bad review of a game and they get fired. So right there, that tells me that the company does not even allow its reviewers to review it as objectively as possible, because if they shit on the game, they're out of a job.
Yeah.
Right,
Right,
which just shows that it's all driven by the dollar. It's sad, but kind of true. That's why, my job, some things that I'm not necessarily proud of doing, but you have to, because it's what you're told, it's what you have to do, and you don't like the practice, but that's how we make the money.
And I think that's a problem that people don't particularly really think about, with especially in regards to gaming journalism, is that on the one hand you're like, yeah, we want an honest review, but on the other hand, I mean, when what was it, IO Interactive, right? Kane and Lynch, when IO Interactive is paying the bills, you're going to give IO Interactive a bad review? I mean,
Right, and this is kind of one of those weird things. So let's actually bring this back into context of how games journalism is a little bit different than other journalism. When you see a review for a particular restaurant in your hometown, or about a particular movie, where do those reviews end up? They end up usually in the local newspaper or on a newspaper website, right? And typically that's one step separated from the genre. While in games journalism, or games reviews and previews specifically, like Game Informer is run by GameStop, which sells video games.
they allegedly have no editorial power. Allegedly, GameStop and Game Informer are supposed to be separate entities, but
Right, but it's
I mean,
still...
I also have a bridge to sell you, if you believe that.
I mean, well, that's one of those things where, they might be separate, but the fact of the matter is that you have a game seller that owns a games journalism site. Same thing with Nintendo Power. I mean, Nintendo Power was actually a little bit more straightforward, because they only reviewed Nintendo games, so it wasn't like they were like, Nintendo games are great, everything else is bad, 5 for everything.
That would have been great. I would have loved to see that.
That'd be fantastic. Nintendo, the brand new Mario Tennis, 10 out of 10. Final Fantasy 6?
1.
Yeah, like, this would be ridiculous. They weren't doing that, but there is sort of this, everybody's around the exact same table, so you don't want to shake it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And how do you even fix something like that? Because the way the new model, especially with the internet, is you can't just sell magazines. You can't... And even if you did sell magazines for games, it's usually directly involved with the games industry. It's not like it's a separate thing like the New York Times. I mean, I do know the New York Times and other major newspapers do host reviews sometimes, but gamers typically don't go to newspapers anymore.
And I think this kind of starts to fall on the gamer themselves to, yeah, you can read as many reviews as you like, but take them with a grain of salt. Use a little caution when you read someone else's, review, or a professional review, that this really is just one person's opinion. Try to find more stuff. Try to find out what the game is about. Use the review to find that out, or watch gameplay videos. Something that I've done recently is, if a game does interest me, I'll try and find videos on YouTube to at least show the very beginning of the game. Maybe the first 10-15 minutes. If it gets my attention, if the price is good, I'll pick it up. And that can go a long way.
No, I think that's a good point, and I do know that, for example, I've moved from things like Game Informer and GameSpot to Kotaku and Polygon, and oftentimes groups like that will post articles a week or two, or even a month ahead of a game, and say, here's the first 15 minutes of the new StarCraft 2 campaign, and they just play through it, and they write an article about their experience with the first 15 minutes. And that's something that's really great, because they're not even giving a review score then, they're just kind of showing you, and also talking about how the game plays. And I know for people like us who are I want to say informed gamers, where we know what we want. Me and Mike, we like ourselves some good old large scale strategy games, so we know what we're looking for, what kind of genres we're expanding towards. I think that the problem with kind of professional games reviews still right now, like on IGN or on Game Informer especially, because it's right there in the store, is that when you have the holiday season and you have the grandmother that wants to buy you the brand new game. If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And people that aren't in the industry but want to buy presents for people that aren't in the industry, if you know what I mean.
Yep, absolutely, and that's just you walk such a fine line in the professional part of the industry that you know, especially if some of your ad revenue is coming from a particular game, it's a fine line to walk between showing your honesty and trying to upsell the game. It's really tough, especially assigning a score to it. Again, that's why a score is literally just a number to me. It's something I just stare at, go, oh, that's nice, and move on.
Fair enough. I think with that, unless anyone else has something else to round out this first portion, we're going to take a quick break to grab some water and move into talking about games journalism in terms of some of the new stuff we see, which is more opinion-based pieces, interviews with the developers, and kind of talk about where it might be going in the future.
Well, that sounds like a good idea, but water, Wyatt? Really? How about something a little more potent?
Yeah,
Well,
I've been drinking bourbon this whole time, so.
Mike is gonna be, drunkenly singing by the end of this. It's a yellow ribbon,
Well, I'm trying to be a gracious host here, but if you guys are saying I should have a gin and tonic, I'm going to go have a gin and tonic.
Something about how the Irish are all great and the English are all bastards. Something like that.
Alrighty, guys. Well, that's a good idea, Wyatt. So on that note, you guys will have some music. We'll go get plastered on the intermission, and we will be back for the second half. You're listening to Downloadable Content, talking about gaming journalism. We'll be back.
Welcome back, everyone. We had a really good part 1 to this about games journalism, really talking about reviews and previews and why the new system, or the system that we've always had, doesn't work. For this kind of second portion, I want to talk a little bit more about the other side of games journalism, which I actually really, really enjoy, and then also talk about maybe where it could go in the future or how things can get better. So with that in mind, I know we've all been talking about we don't go and look at gaming professional reviews in order to choose which games. But who here on a daily basis visits something like Polygon or Kotaku or a gaming website to look at articles?
I probably visit Engadget close to every day just to kind of see what pops up in terms of information. And maybe occasionally they have an editorial or two that show up. Sometimes they're worth a read.
Yeah, I mean, I typically will check Kotaku and Polygon as well. I mean, like I said, I get a good number of my episode topics from opinion pieces that I see there. Because I feel that some of the topics that get brought up certainly merit a full-on discussion. And I also, now that this is going to sound like I'm a reader of play. I do read Game Informer for the articles. I basically just ignore the reviews entirely for Game Informer and just actually read the news. And occasionally they will have some very good opinion pieces in there.
I read Game Informer when my blood pressure is too low.
Ow!
Well, I mean,
that was a classic right there.
yes. Well, I'm on Kotaku right now, and there's been about 4 or 5 articles that I've clicked into just to read them because I find them really interesting.
I thought you seemed distracted.
No, not right now, but I just have it up. Like, for example, one that I'm looking at right now is talking about, the title is, "It's not clear who Alienware's Steam machine is for." There was one that was, and that's obviously a piece that's talking about, it's not a review of the game engine. They did a review and they said that it was a good engine, but they're just not sure who they're advertising to and where it's going to go from there, which is a valid argument. It's not a review, but it's talking about where the industry might go. So it's gaming news. There was another one that was kind of talking about Tomb Raider that was not a review, but talking about how the brand new company that has owned them previously, or right now, is turning her from just sort of being like a sex icon into an actual kind of legendary figure and kind of revitalizing her in a new light. Again, not a review, but kind of talking about an opinion of what it means to be Lara Croft, and then what it means now. So, do people like those sort of articles?
I mean, I do. I think it's more. It's interesting when it's more about the whole culture, and you're discussing it as a medium as opposed to just a showpiece. So I mean, I enjoy that. It makes you think sometimes. I mean, there are a lot of good articles about the games that like Civilization and like Europa Universalis and stuff. Why is it that people want to be these armchair generals? And it leads to a lot of really, it makes you think. As opposed to just, this game's a 7.
Either that, or now with all the live streamers and the people on Twitch that are just doing really weird things. But that's actually how I found out about the Twitch Plays Pokemon phenomenon, was through Kotaku and people talking about it, like, why are people doing this? And then you went and checked it out. But it was a way that you kind of let people know. It wasn't a review about Twitch Plays Pokemon. It was just sort of letting you know that it was there. Or I know for you, Mike, you'd appreciate this when Kotaku was doing the articles on the people that were setting up like 52 AIs to play Civilization 4 and see how badly the world went to hell.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I love being told about that.
They had 52 AIs.
Not 52, but a lot.
I can't remember the specific one. I can't pull it up while talking at the same time. But they pretty much set up the AIs more than you typically should have, and they just put the game on infinite go mode, took away the victory conditions, and just walked away. And they kept checking up on it as the world just went to absolute hell.
I don't remember the exact time frame in the game, but sometime around like the 1940s, the world kind of just erupted into nuclear war. It was kind of scary. Maybe we shouldn't be building these computers.
Right, so we're seeing articles like that. Another type of new article that we're seeing is esports, which is really fascinating for me because people were, we've known esports have been around for a while. In Korea, during StarCraft's kind of heyday, original StarCraft, they had, I think, 3 TV channels showing 24/7 StarCraft coverage, which is insane by our standards. But right now, we just had at Madison Square Garden League of Legends being played, and it was being streamed. At BlizzCon, they're able to sell you a virtual ticket to Blizz Convention to look at the sports games that are going on during that time period, as well as at the keynote address and get some virtual coupons. So there's a lot of news that's coming through that didn't exist 5 or 6 years ago.
Oh yeah, with everything evolving so rapidly, especially with the advent of Twitch and taking off as like the wildfire it's been, especially with esports. I mean, when you get ESPN's attention, something big is going on, and that's exactly what esports has been. It's hearing about virtual tickets being sold and virtual stuff. Yeah, it's kind of cheap and cheesy, but hey, it's working.
I think that's a generational thing, though, because I don't know about you guys, but people who I talk to who are around my age, I'm 30. The whole idea of watching someone play a whole game on Twitch generally seems to be, you get a disinterested response. When I was growing up, obviously games were not, they've changed dramatically, not just the graphics, but the whole attitude around them. Never in a million years I think we would be having a debate as to whether or not a video game was art. Castlevania 1, is not a piece of art. But the idea that people get so immersed in this thing where they watch people play like an entire game on Twitch, or even on Steam now, you can request to just watch people on your friends list play the game.
Yeah.
And that might be good to let you know what kind of game it is, but I just don't understand the whole, I'm going to sit down with a big old bowl of popcorn and I'm going to watch people play League of Legends for 8 hours.
Okay, so I'm 30, I'm your age, and that is kind of what I do with my spare time, so...
I said generally. I didn't say all. I said generally. I do have a friend who plays League of Legends,
fair point.
He reacted in terror when I expressed that opinion. So I said,
Back in my day.
Back in my day, damn kids.
I can go Cranky Kong as well, and wave my stick at the people who, especially trash on the NES. On the NES games, that's just been like, okay, I need to smack you upside the head here, and this is what we had.
We don't need
Appreciate
10 buttons, we just needed 2, and we liked it. Yeah,
We were grateful.
But there is definitely some generational thing. I just hit 30 in the last little bit. I know Brian's coming up on his. And I know for me, the Let's Play phenomenon really, or also just watching people play games, doesn't interest me. I do like the ability to spectate, to learn more about a game. I have kind of dabbled in some competitive gaming, like League of Legends or Heroes of the Storm, and sometimes being able to look at a replay or see how someone played the game before can be really useful. But in terms of just like sitting down and watching for hours, I was kind of raised in the household where you only had one controller, and you wanted to be the person with the controller, right?
Yeah, you were the kid.
Well, I guess maybe for me then it was just different because, for me it was never about playing, it was about the experience and talking and enjoying and having fun. So, having someone else have the controller was never really a problem with me. I think that's why I like the Let's Play as much as I do, especially when they're playing games that I've already conquered. Like I'm watching someone play for the very first time Pokemon Heart Gold, and I had completely beaten it. And watching this person make so many mistakes and rookie errors that you just don't see people, especially ones in the meta. It humors me. I don't have to spend a whole lot of time. It's a 20-30 minute episode, but I have fun with it, and it's a break. It's a nice break when I'm not actually actively playing games.
Right. It's a very new type of games journalism. Let's Play. Let's be honest. I think Let's Play we can consider to be gaming journalism, right?
Is that like the equivalent of like someone on the street in Baghdad with a microphone and a camera reporting live from the scene?
I don't want to disparage the people that are putting themselves in danger, but yes, it's a little bit of kind of like, I guess
Happy
streaming
Veterans
live.
Day.
But it is a type of new games journalism, or for example,
Yeah, I guess in a sense it is.
I mean, because they're sitting at the game, they're commenting about it, they're giving you your experience. It's a user review in progress, which I think is really cool. Another type that I like that Kotaku does or Polygon does is they help me find. They scour the internet for new videos and articles and takes on things. So I remember when they found a 9-minute video of all the different ways you can die in Resident Evil 4, and that was a game that I played the death out of with Brian and with Ben and with other people. And years after I had stopped with the game, and I thought that I had beaten it with a dead horse, and I watched this 9-minute video and watched 2 or 3 people beat the living, get killed in ways I hadn't even experienced. That was fantastic. I enjoyed that article. Anyone else here know about Bit Brigade as a band? I know Brian does.
Oh, yes.
Bit Brigade is what you said?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, they're fun.
Yeah, that is unfamiliar to me, so someone would have to explain this one.
Okay, I love them and I hate them at the same time.
This ought to be good then.
Okay. They've come to the last couple of PAX East. Now they're an amazing video game band, and their whole spiel is that you have the musicians, and also on stage with them is the player, and he's playing on some manner of modified console, and it's hooked up to a big, huge projection screen in the theater. The band is playing the accompanying video game music to whatever game he's playing, and
that actually sounds kind of awesome.
And the player speed runs the game. So the first time they came to PAX 2 years ago, he speed ran the original Legend of Zelda while the band was playing the appropriate music behind him.
Of course.
So every time he would go back into Hyrule Field, the band would shift into the Hyrule Field music. When he'd go into a dungeon, they'd shift into whatever dungeon music. When he got a piece of the Triforce, they'd play that jingle.
Whenever he walked into a cave, dead silence.
Yeah. And so that was the love part. The love of the fact that they were actually able to, with precision, play the appropriate music to wherever he was at, but at the same time, it took him 45 minutes from beginning to end to beat the Legend of Zelda, the NES Legend of Zelda, while at the same time obtaining every single power-up, every single heart container, piece of heart, and meanwhile, it's been almost 30 years. I haven't beaten the fucking game because.
Right, so he's doing this in a stadium, well, not a stadium, he's doing this in a venue with like 3,000 to 4,000 people watching, and I remember every time he got to the one of the pieces of the Triforce, they'd play that little music sting, like they would just stop what they were doing, they'd play the music string on the electric guitars, and you'd see a few people putting up their hands in the shape of the Triforce, and then like by the time he got to the last piece, everybody's doing it and they're screaming, and so pretty much you're watching a game be played from start to finish. And in a way that probably you will never be able to.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, what is the record? The record for all items. Now, keep in mind, this is the fastest known route, and this is if a supercomputer played it. Would just be over half an hour. All items.
Yeah, it took 45 minutes, and then...
So, yeah, I can believe that given human error.
Sounds like the most excruciating 45 minutes of my life.
It would be... I'm like, the rote memorization needed just to get this. And then last year, Bit Brigade came back, and 39 minutes, Metroid for the NES from beginning to end. And
with everything?
Everything. Got every single...
Wow, that's impressive.
And if the player dies, the band breaks up.
Yes, that's actually a fact. No, it's not. But my question is that this is sort of like a Let's Play that's live that's been turned into entertainment. But again, if we're going to go with this kind of hypothetical, this is sort of what the new games journalism feeds off of, is having articles or opinions about important things like Lara Croft getting a change and what that means, or about why a game did a dramatic change, or why it changed editors, about people being fired in the industry or not, and then about people playing the game and having fun. People like clicking into that more, from my personal experience, than reading professional reviews. A lot of people will read a professional review and then discard it and kind of be like, oh, well, that just validates what I thought, or it doesn't validate what I thought. I don't like it anymore. But they're more looking for brand new. They're really looking for content to experience and kind of talk about than actual reviews and previews.
Right, and that's kind of what I was talking earlier about, is watching these, especially with the Let's Plays, of watching the first episode or two. I might have heard about it in a video preview or article, but what a game says in development and what the final product is are two totally different things. Or it could be the exact same thing. There are some games that you're just like Sonic Boom, that you see at first at E3 and go, wow, this game plays like crap. I'm sure it will be better upon the final release. And then you play the final release and you go, no, they really haven't changed much of anything. But watching like the first couple of videos kind of gives you an idea of, okay, this is what I expected, or this was not what I expected, and kind of gives me an idea of, this is something I would enjoy or not enjoy. And one of the biggest examples of this in a game that I've been pining to get back into, but I really haven't been able to, is an indie game on Steam called Robot Roller Derby Disco Dodgeball. And it sounds about... Yeah, Robot Roller Derby Disco Dodgeball, and it plays exactly like you think it does. And
I don't think you appreciate the power of my imagination.
Perhaps not, but it was just I thought the game sounded like fun, but it wasn't until I saw, about a half an hour of play that I went, yes, this is something I absolutely must have in my library, and therefore there it sits, and I poured about 40 hours or so, but I want to get back into it again now that I'm no longer sidetracked by other games. But that's just the power of watching some of these new videos come out and watching other people play games as this form of medium. And I guess in that sense it kind of is like game journalism, because it's giving people a first-hand experience of, this is what the game is like. And you see that in, like you said, the 15-minute previews with Kotaku or Polygon. And opinion pieces like Engadget's opinion piece with Super Mario Maker, realizing, oh, most people are garbage at designing Mario levels, but that's okay, and here's why.
And this is nothing new, and even though I scoff and I say that I have no interest in that, I'm gonna make a play now for the biggest nerd in the episode by bringing up a little magazine that used to be around, and I think it was founded in 1985. I'm not sure. But when I was in high school and late elementary school, I used to get this magazine. It was every 2 months. It was called Dungeon Magazine. And it was for Dungeons & Dragons players. And what it would contain was like a bunch of pre-made modules for people to run and play. And there were also chunks of the magazine where people had talked about like last month's adventure. And I mean, this was a way that people played the game and interacted with other people who played the game. And it's kind of like the grandfather of a Let's Play, or however you want to look at it.
Absolutely. I got a friend who used to have those kind of magazines, would tell me all about them.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, it's just interesting to see that it's really nothing new. It's just different. It's changed, but it's still pretty much we're doing the same thing we did 20 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, let's bring it back to reviews a little bit. Even when I look at professional reviews, I'll often go to the comments section, and I will go, probably 1 or 2 down, and I will find someone who says, "No, you're wrong. This is not a 7.5. This is an 8. You voted this other one as an 8.5, and it's a much worse game, so this should at least be an 8." Or and use those sort of conversations where people read the review, they don't really agree with it, and they spend a lot of time arguing about it.
This is why I avoid the comments section.
I can't help myself.
Internet?
But it's just one of those things where a lot of people. I think I'm kind of coming to this idea from this conversation, and I think I've had it before too, which is we're not looking so much for reviews or previews to tell us what to think, but we're looking for things to either make us think or for more content to kind of digest and look at for ourselves to come to our own opinions.
I think you hit the nail on the head on that one. Is I want to be able to think and formulate my own opinions from what I am looking at, and I think this is why Brian even wanted to start this whole podcast to begin with, is for us to have these meaningful discussions about the games that we play or want to play. Sorry to just throw that in your face, Brian, but
No breaking the fourth wall, man.
So meta.
let me. Okay, I'm done with the sledgehammer here. Someone take it back.
Yeah,
That's actually a segue that I'm going to use. Brian, go ahead.
how meta of you, Nick.
You're welcome.
I'm actually going to use that as a segue. I was going to bring this up a little bit later, but this seems like a good time too, where this is actually kind of why I started Sprites and Dice. I was actually, I think it was at Brit Brigade, or we were watching Proto Men with my co-founder John, who kind of does the technology, the web design. We're building our own website from the ground up. We've been using Blogger as our start for the last 2 years. But one thing that we talked about is that we loved watching Bit Brigade and all these people enjoying a game that was 20 years old. And enjoying themselves and relishing in it and just appreciating a game. It wasn't just about the nitpicking score. Otherwise, we were having this conversation for a while, and we kind of said, why isn't there a website that kind of just talks about, enjoying a game? So, and we went, yeah, why isn't that a thing? So one of the founding things that we said as our mission statement for Sprites and Dice was that when we do a review, it's because we already like it. We put that actually in our About Us page. We are not going to review a game we don't like. We don't give a score. We just rant about why we love the game. So that's how we do reviews. Number one. Number two, oftentimes we've actually found that our best articles are oftentimes talking more in depth about a game than giving a review article. So that would be, for example, my favorite article that I've written was one where I talked about how anyone here play Transistor?
Nope.
Yes.
I know you have. Well, in the game, I won't.
Why did you
spoil.
ask?
I knew that with you. I wasn't sure about anybody else. Brian, I knew that you had played. I wasn't sure about anyone else. Ugh. But in the game, just as without giving anything away, there's a button where the main character who can't speak hums. Like kind of the world just shuts down. Unless there's enemies around, then they continue to try to attack you. But you can't do anything when you're holding down this button, and it does nothing but make you hum a tune based on the music around you in the game. And I wrote an article about why that mattered to the game, the thematics of it, and I kind of it was almost like an English essay, if that makes any sense, about a book about why this game had this button. And I loved writing that article. I actually had one of the developers talk about it, or leave me a comment saying, hey, I loved your article, and that made me die a little inside of happiness. But I was really happy to write that more than a base review, because it mattered to me, and also I wanted to talk about why a game could have a deeper meaning. Is that what people are looking for?
I guess it kind of depends on what they decide they want to go for, because there have been a few games that I've played before that seem to me like it's not just they don't just pertain to the game itself, but it also pertains to other things that go on around in humanity. And one of the games, unfortunately, I had to say I didn't fully finish it, but it was an interesting one to go through. It was and they actually got the sequel coming out soon. It was Deuce EX Human Revolution, if you've ever heard of that game.
Oh yeah,
that one was. I didn't fully get through that one because I didn't like the combat system with that one as much, but that one was a really good one because it brought up some interesting questions about different things that influenced humanity and everything like that for it. And actually, not only with that one, but one of my other favorite games, and Brian knows about this one, is called Remember Me. Remember Me. That was a fun.
Yes.
That was one of my favorite ones, but I think I still actually have it. But the way that they actually brought up is like, who really gets to, what happens when you let someone else control like what humanity gets to think about and everything like that, and how messing with your mind and stuff like that can actually go. And probably one of my other favorite ones, because I even though people aren't exactly the biggest fans of some of the newer releases, the Assassin's Creed stuff, because that actually does have some historical value with it, and I always enjoy playing those games a lot as well.
Right. Actually, Remember Me is a great example of kind of what we were talking about beforehand.
Yeah.
That game got panned in a lot of reviews because it tried a lot of different things and people didn't know what to do with it. And
Yeah.
one of the articles was, really great promise doesn't succeed. That was like kind of the main review. So I know for some gamers, like yourself, and probably me, I haven't not had a chance yet to play it. I'm waiting for a Steam sale of it. The sort of content of it is right up my alley. And one thing I love about games is its ability to be like a book in terms of talking about things that matter, or kind of the themes or depth behind it. And I really like articles that talk about that, and that's one of the major things that we talk about on Sprites and Dice. Just as a really kind of aside, I was doing some maintenance on the website, and the two most viewed articles on our website, one is a portion of a review where I talk about Banished, the computer game, if you've played it, how it's better than SimCity, and it was a review, and that's our best. And then just underneath it, within about 100 views, is an article that John wrote about why he used to hate Bidoof, the Pokemon, and now why he can't get away from Bidoof, and how he decided to accept Bidoof into his life. Those are our two most viewed articles.
What?
One is about
okay, hang on. I'm bringing that article up on my site.
So one's very much like a traditional review. The reason why that review probably did as well was because it was just right place, right time. The game had just come out. I managed to get it on a Reddit, and people really got into the conversation about whether or not it was better than SimCity. I made a bold claim because I like the game that much. So that one makes sense. The other one had nothing to do about a review. It was about a game that had been out for a while, and he's just talking about a ridiculous Pokemon in the game. And somehow we nearly got 3,000 views out of that one article alone. Which was fantastic. I find it really interesting that a lot of people, and a lot of the views that we find that we're getting the most views on, and the views that we get most often, even long after we've published them, are not the reviews themselves, but articles that are talking about the game piece on their own and what it means.
And actually, Wyatt, can I add in one thing? Because this is kind of like a little bit of a question since you got me talking about it. Especially, do you think that maybe if in some of the journalism stuff that if maybe people talked about a little bit more, not just like the game mechanics and stuff, but actually if the story, like going through the game, like had any sort of relevance to them, do you think that maybe if journalism added that to it, then maybe it would get a little bit more, I'd say maybe respect or something like that towards it?
I think so. I mean, that's kind of one of the weird things is how do we change the system? That's kind of what I want to end on. So, for example, on Sprites and Dice, we do not use any sort of system in terms of reviewing it. Like, we don't say, 5 stars out of 5 stars or 3 thumbs up out of 2. We don't do anything like that. We say in our About Us page, if we review an article or if we review a game, we like it already, and you know that. We actually ran into a problem this last PAX where someone managed to get a review copy of a board game, and they tried playing it, and they didn't like it. So they're like, well, now what do I do? So we found somebody else on the team who liked playing the game, and we've been playing through versions of it. And when we write our review on this game, we're going to talk about how this game's not for everyone because it's purposely a tough game with these elements. So we tailor the review based on what we feel as an individual, rather than like giving an arbitrary score. Is that a way to move forward, or do you think we should just move away from reviews entirely and just talk about the experience of a particular game? What do people think about that?
I think if you
reviews...
take the... Go ahead. No.
We both tried to walk through the door, and we're like, no, after you. No, after you. I'm sorry. Nick, you first.
All right.
I think review scores are going to pretty much. I think we can all agree. I don't think review scores are going anywhere. Really, they're not. I think Wyatt, you alluded to this a little bit. It's not really for us, the informed gamer. It's more for the people that are trying to buy the Christmas gifts and are maybe trying to get into something for the first time, a first system buyer, a youngin. But I think for us it is about the experience, and that's something I actually talked with a coworker of mine about, who listens to DLC and really loves what the show is. And really it's just about we talk about our experiences with the game and what we like about it, what maybe we don't care so much for, maybe why you wouldn't like this game. And that's kind of the whole reason why both he and I came up with kind of okay, I would wait until it goes on Steam sale, or if you can find this, in a buy one get one at GameStop, go get it. Or I wouldn't even bother with it on your GameFly account. We kind of talk about that kind of a scoring system, if you really want to call it that, because that tells us how much does this game mean to us. Like, I can pull out any Mario game, and I can already tell you I'm paying full price. And you laugh.
No, I'm laughing because it's true. I'm the same way with Blizzard games. Everyone has got their own, like, purposeful fanboydom, where a new game comes out and you go, this is maybe terrible, but damn it, there goes my money.
That's because exactly. Nick is Mario. Let's face it.
No, you know deep down secretly I'm Mega Man. But yes. So I'm gonna play games I already know and love and enjoy: Borderlands, Zelda, Mario, Mega Man, etc., etc., etc. But games that I may not be as into, like Dishonored, like Bastion, like Strider. There was a Strider remake on Steam. Those games I'm not going to be as familiar with, so I need to ask people, how is their experience with these kind of games, who have already played it, who already invested the money towards it, or those who have shown videos or shown previews or what have you, say about this game, that really makes the tipping point of whether or not I'm going to buy something or not. Even going beyond the price. It's listening to all these experiences and actually playing the game that makes it so, does this company deserve my money or does it not? That's really what it comes down to. Is the game worth playing so much so that you deserve whatever the asking price is?
I don't think that. I mean, I agree with you in that I don't think that, like, a score. It was something you said early on, that it can't really. There's no way you can convey what the game means to you with an arbitrary number. Because if you take a game, and here comes a plug, like Darkest Dungeon on Steam.
Yes,
which is an incredible game. It is I would give it a 5 out of 5 if I was going to totally go back on what I was saying about the value of a number score. But the idea is that the game is brutally hard. It is like Dark Souls meets Final Fantasy in the world of H.P. Lovecraft. Like, it's not. It's so if you get frustrated, if you want a game that you're going to beat, don't get it. The score plummets drastically, and that's why these things are, it depends. It speaks to the individual, which is, whereas the number score might be good for the younglings, not youngins.
Younglings.
Yeah.
Fault me, I'm part Southern.
Back in my day.
It is, to someone who plays games, to like a gamer who's been a gamer since they were 5 or 6 years old, you need to know more about the game than just the number. That's it.
I totally agree. Anyone else have anything else to add about that, or?
I don't think so.
No, I'm good.
I regret this whole thing.
Ryan,
What? Why? What do you want from me?
so Mike,
What do you want from my life?
I guess my closing question is, where games journalism is now, where do you see going in the future? What would you like to see personally out of going to Kotaku or Polygon or Game Informer? Like, if you could remake Game Informer, let's use that as our final question. If you could remake Game Informer in your own image, how would you remake it, besides making it just about one game or character, Nick? If you just want to remake it, how would you remake it in terms of making it a journalistic magazine that you think would do well or kind of attract people's attention?
Well, starting with, if we're using Game Informer, I think first and foremost is separate it from its parent company.
Yeah.
That would be, instead of making it a legitimate video game magazine instead of basically a subscription that GameStop employees peddle with their 90 billion question survey every time you
Forced
check
to
in.
peddle that.
I know that.
You
but-
don't want to do that.
I know that, but at the same time, I think if you're using Game Informer as a basis for this question, I think probably the most important thing is to separate it from the parent company, so that it's not really seen as gaming propaganda.
But
It is the propaganda wing of GameStop.
It is. It is.
But taking it away from kind of where it sits in reality, in terms of just like changing the content in the magazine, how would you change it? Would you remove scores entirely? Would you remove reviews entirely, or how would you change it about?
Well, I mentioned that, one of the biggest reasons why I don't pay any attention to professional reviews is that a single review is one person's opinion. I do rag on Famitsu on occasion, but I like their way of reviewing games, in which they have 4 scores per game. They have 4 people take a look at the game and give it a review score, and I think it's kind of like that whole Olympic judging model, where you have 4 or 5 judges that base it, give it a score. I think that might be a little bit of a better reflector.
And actually, one of the things I'll add in as well with Game Informer, because I see it way too often, especially when I get the subscription stuff, it seems to me like more than anything else when it comes to the parent companies, they don't really want to focus on like the actual game itself. They want to more or less focus on like all the DLC, all the add-ons, all like nothing that even pertains really to a gamer's experience. They want to just pertain to stuff that they can get you to spend your money on more than anything else. And to me, that's not really the best way to do it. And that's one of the things why I may read through it just to see what other people's opinions are and stuff. But again, I just take that with a grain of salt, because again, if they actually tried to go based off like how actual gameplay and stuff would like work, like maybe possibly like the plot, the storyline behind it, like battle systems, all sorts of those kind of things, depending on like what the game is, then it might be better for like actually influencing someone to get it. But because all the things that I ever see are just like the hype about it, like stuff that's what they think is gonna happen with it, what they think will happen in the future and stuff like that. They don't focus on the game and stuff. They just focus on everything else around it, and that's really not that. That to me needs to change, honestly, with a lot of these ones.
Well, the thing is that with that is that, like it or not, Game Informer specifically is not going to change in the near future. And the reason it's not going to change is that it fulfills a purpose. Like it or not, there's obviously none of us on this call, as has been established, but like it or not, there are people who will buy a new game based on the score, who will buy a new game based on the magazine, on the review. I mean, that's what GameStop is. It is, you guys know those holiday mailers you get around the holidays.
Yep.
That's what
Yeah.
GameStop. That's what Game Informer is. It is GameStop's year-round holiday mailer. That's all it
It's a great way
is.
of putting it, yeah.
Yep.
I mean, and the problem with like to just to like use Game Informer like as to equate it to something like Kotaku or Polygon. I mean, Game Informer still. What gaming magazine or gaming journalism outlet do you know that still has like the cover story is always a video game? Like I think the last issue of Game Informer, the cover is Mafia, the new Mafia game. And there's a whole 7-page, 8-page article about how awesome this game is going to be. Oh my god! Like, you know. And that's what it is every month. It serves its purpose. It's not video game journalism, but Game Informer, for better or for worse, does serve its purpose, and it does it well.
And that's when you have to start thinking of Game Informer as less of gaming journalism, as more of gaming advertising, which I guess in part is kind of what the whole journalism thing is in the first place, is to help bring recognition and promotion to video games, to all kinds of video games, be they good or bad. And a site, and you know, I talked a few times about Joystick before they went to their parent company Engadget, and now it's just a shell of what they once were. But Joystick would have all that kind of, you know, would go about rumors, but say, hey, take it with a pinch of salt. They would go in depth. They would do editorials. They would do reviews, and would, you know, one of the few that I think, you know, really stayed more middle of the road with their reviews, because really I don't think they had much ad revenue to go on. That's why they shut down. You really want, you know, I think that's what the basis of gaming journalism is, in that shell, is the recognition and promotion of the video games. And at least, you know, some of these games I would have never heard about had it not been for, you know, some, you know, an offbeat gaming company talking about, hey, you know, this is an actual game that exists. You know, Kotaku did the same, you know, sorry, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Joystick also talked about Twitch plays Pokemon just like Kotaku did. And that's how I found out about it. And really, that's what it comes down to, is just, you know, trying to understand that there's just such a big, broad scope of video games, from the shooters to the MMOs to the JRPGs to your indie, what's the word I'm thinking for? Indie. Lookalikes is a harsh word for it, but yeah, it's kind of the callback to, you know, I guess a flashback to you know, some other games of going, oh yeah, it reminds me. I'm sorry.
Like a retro style game, you mean?
Not really retro, but like Shantae, you know, Shantae the Half Genie kind of reminds me a bit of kind of more of a Metroidvania style game, rather than a rather than having its own, you know, unique genre. It kind of calls you back to, you know, some other styles and points of gaming, and it, you know, it's just this entire huge umbrella of gaming, from all different kinds of forms, styles, arts, and yes, I will use the word arts, that, you know, you want to have people recognize. And that's the whole point of the gaming journalism, is just, hey, here's something that, you know, like it or not, something that at least have it worth a read, see if it's worth your time.
Fair enough. So I think just one way to kind of wrap it up is, the consensus I'm hearing from a lot of people is, we'd love to see more actual content about the games themselves, more things in depth about the game themselves, and not so much just a number pasted on the top of it to try to give it a value. Am I correct?
Yep.
Yeah. Numbers are nice, but numbers are also for, you know, the people who aren't as well informed as we are.
I wouldn't put it that way, but
Yeah, Nick. I mean, really.
I hate to talk down on them, but it's kind of how I truly feel about it. I just feel like the number just, to me, is meaningless.
It is not meaningless to video game publishers.
No, it's not. And that's what a lot of companies do. They take those numbers, they'll slap it on their labels, they'll make their Game of the Year editions, and it works, it sells, and they make more money off of it. Great for them. They want to use that kind of system. But, again, I already know what I'm looking for. If that's not what I'm looking for, I'm not getting it. I don't care how many GOTY symbols you slap on it.
And I think that's kind of where it's really interesting, where I think one of them pushes away from just reviews and more towards content and looking at the experience, like those articles about the first 15 minutes of this sort of game or Let's Plays, is coming more and more into view, is the push towards indie gaming that's happened recently. A great example is, again, Darkest Dungeon, where it's a game that's being made by a very small group of people. What's the original Orcs Must Die? Now they're a much bigger industry, but other games like that where they weren't so much reliant on a publisher and the reviews themselves, but in terms of getting their message out there so people knew the game existed and getting people talking about it. And I think that's really where we'd want to see games journalism go. So not just the big game publishers that have a lot of ad money are publishing websites and publishing and financing this older style of journalism that doesn't quite work for games as it can for things like food or movies, but instead kind of just give us the content and give us the information that we're looking for to look at all the different things that are out there. Because one of the best things about gaming, I guess, is that there is a game for everyone.
The thing that gaming journalism has to overcome, just one last thing real quick, is that there is, like was said just a minute ago, I know what I want. So the problem, though, that does ring true, but it is a problem for gaming journalism because baseball fans like Brian and myself will most likely always buy a PlayStation because they want to play the show. Football fans are always going to buy Madden. Call of Duty fans are always going to buy Call of Duty. You're really not going to sway somebody with a bad review. I'm going to buy the next year's edition of the show. It's going to happen. It doesn't matter. And I mean, that is a hurdle for gaming journalism to encounter, but it doesn't necessarily have to leap over it because that's the idea, is that gaming journalism should not be about trying to sell you something. So it really still needs to find its niche, whatever, I don't know how to say it. It needs, whatever, it's je ne sais quoi. It needs to find what it's supposed to be.
Nope, I think that's fair enough. Anyone else have any last remarks?
No, I think the dead silence kind of
Well,
yeah, the cook gets in the background.
that's it. I think we've put a nice bow. I think we put a nice bow on it.
well, no, thanks for exploring it with me. Hopefully I was a decent guest conversationalist here and did not, beat it with a dead horse. I hope you guys have a great one. Thanks for listening.
Well, there we go. And before I bid everyone farewell, if you have any questions, comments, thoughts on this episode or any other episode of Downloadable Content, once again, Facebook.com/DLContent, at Twitter at DLContent, on Tumblr, DLCpodcast.tumblr.com. Email us, dlcontent1@gmail.com, and again, all episodes can be found on iTunes, YouTube, and Stitcher. So, there you have it. So, well done, Wyatt. That was your first spin in the host chair.
Absolutely. I had fun. It was a good time.
Good.
Wow, there was some contempt there.
Good. Now, I'll take
my podcast.
Yes, I'll take it back now. No. Actually, that was a really good topic that you did want to bring up. That was, I thought when you suggested the idea of gaming journalism, I had a feeling that it would be a very, very meaty topic, and again, it's such a broad topic that I was like, okay, where do you want to go with it? And I think you did well.
Thank you. I mean, again, I'll do my own little plug right here. Sprites and Dice, which is just spritesanddice.com. That was me and my friend John's kind of answer to games journalism, is to kind of make our own and kind of make it more, kind of embrace the fact that it is fanboyism in sometimes, where you play the games that you like to play and make it about, instead of it trying to make it where you put things down and tear things apart critically, instead really show when you really appreciate something and then tear things apart that you like critically to kind of show maybe where it can be better or what the themes are behind it and why it matters. So that's my own answer to it. I hope that other people have their own responses and they're willing to comment either on my website or on yours. And besides that, I hope everyone else has a great day.
Alrighty then, it just remains for me to once again thank Wyatt, Nick, Mike, and Ryan. Ron is... Ron has been on 73 episodes, so it's like, the fact that he's not here, I still feel that he's here.
He is omnipresent.
He is omnipresent, so Ryan. Thank Ryan for being on this episode.
There you go.
So there we go. We got that squared away. All right, I'm Brian. Have a good one, everyone.